Hi and welcome to Anju Asks. I'm here with Rosanna Trigg, founder of The Yard in Singapore. It is a really solid, growing business with 4 venues at the moment in Singapore and soon to be more. So exciting. Today we're talking about teen girls, and we've talked a lot about teen boys at the moment, especially with adolescents being on Netflix. There's been a lot of conversation about them, but today I really want to talk about teen girls, and obviously getting them to do physical activity and involved in sports is such a great thing for tweens and teens. But I want to know about gymnastics especially, because there's some really special things that happen in the gym. So hi Rosie, thank you for joining us today.
Hi Anju, thanks for having me.
So tweens and teen girls, they face so much social pressure at the moment. It's a different age to when we were younger.
Definitely.
And I want to talk a little bit about the social pressures that they face at school and how getting them away from school into the gym is actually a good thing for them.
Well, I mean, as you said, it's a very different age for young girls growing up interpersonal relationships and experiences that they have at school, but also through things like social media. It's almost like at every point that they're engaging in anything, there's this need to be on, there's this oversight from, not just their peers, but a wider audience of people. Yeah. So a lot of pressures that they have, which you and I typically wouldn't have had when we were growing up. And that's not to say that being a teen was easy at that time. It wasn't at all. And I think growing up as well, where in a space like Singapore, where academics and the expectations of academics is very, very high, being in a position where you can come into a place like the Yard, into a gymnastics environment where girls and boys, but mostly girls, are in a position where they can disconnect from all of that, escape from all of that noise, and be 100% focused on being in control of their bodies, working with challenge, and doing that with like-minded other girls, where they essentially share in a struggle together, they share in a challenge, which has very different kind of social dynamics and I guess rewards than what would typically happen in a school environment.
I guess it's kind of a safe space for them, and somewhere actually where those tags and markers that they might have at school, maybe they're seen as the dorky one or the cool one or whatever. Maybe those things don't follow them to the gym, right? They can almost reinvent themselves and just focus on what they're there to do.
Well, I think it removes the superficial.
Yeah.
And so all of the things that young girls are judged on, and, even as adults, when we are on our social media accounts, etc. It's a difficult space to navigate, and you're constantly being bombarded with versions of whether it's beauty standards, body images, all those sorts of things. And I think as adults, that's a difficult thing to process. So how we can expect 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, or 12, 13-year-olds who are particularly vulnerable to be able to, I guess, cut through the noise easily that's a pretty challenging job for them. But the great thing about coming into the gym is that all of that noise is left behind. The nature of the sport is that it's so physically demanding, it's very mentally demanding, so you can't afford to be distracted by things. And the beauty about it as well is that, we all know the impacts of physical activity increases serotonin, endorphins, so the typical things that young girls are struggling with today socially with regards to social anxiety, predisposition to depression, those sorts of things are kind of removed from that equation, which is lovely to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, talking about those things, there are some very special friendships that are made in gymnastics that's away from school. There's another very special relationship, and that's between the coach, who often becomes a bit of a mentor, right? I think the students often look up to their coach because they've got a more direct relationship that you might have with many, many different teachers at school for different subjects and different aspects of your life. So tell me a bit about that relationship and how important it can be.
Well, this is something that I feel quite passionately about, and it's something that at the Yard we really try to embody the philosophy that, yes, we're a gymnastics provider and we teach gymnastics, but we essentially use sport to teach a number of life skills and a number of transferable skills as well. And the coach is pivotal, plays a pivotal role in that. And so, like I said, when you've got kids that are trying to figure out who they are, what their identity is, and you have this very kind of steady adult in your life that is away from the parent construct that you have with your child. I have children.
Yes.
You have children. And so there's a very different relationship that you have. And for some athletes that we train, some of our girls will train 24 hours a week. So in some circumstances, and I know for myself growing up in gymnastics, I saw my coaches more than I saw my actual parents.
Wow. Yeah.
So they can hold a very significant and prominent role in the lives of your children. And coaching done well, and when we have good coaches that really recognize that level of trust and presence that they have in a young girl's life, it can be the foundation of things, like, having that resilience there, having perseverance and building those things that go on beyond the gym, really. And I think one of the unique things about gymnastics is because of the time that's involved in it and that relationship. There's a lot of time and trust that go into it. So not just from a communicative point of view, but also if I'm coaching a young child, they are actually entrusting me with their safety. So there's a lot of work that has to go into that relationship to ensure that that gymnast trusts that if they're ever in a position where they're going to fall, I will be there to catch them. And if they're in a position where they are falling, I'm teaching them how to get back up, how to try again, and how to persevere through whatever the challenges that they're going through in the gymnastics process. So it is an incredible relationship, and I'm very fortunate to have experienced that across now, without showing my age, going into another generation of girls and seeing them grow up and seeing them turn into really strong, resilient young women and watching them go off to university. We've had some athletes get scholarships to go to university through their gymnastics. So that role of the coach it can be quite life-changing for some young athletes.
It's amazing. I actually just got goosebumps when you were talking about that, because I think it's not just that physical trust that you're talking about, and that's what actually generates and transfers into an emotional trust as well. And that's why we're really talking about teen girls, and it's so important because it's such a fragile phase that, they might not feel that there are people that they can turn to and talk to about sensitive issues. But when you've got people in your life that you trust, that's when they feel that they can open up and talk about any kinds of difficulties that they're having. It's so important to have people like that in their lives.
Absolutely. And it is something as well that parent relationship with the child is one thing. I'm a parent. I want my kids to do well in school. I want them to be happy. There's a lot of expectation there. Whereas a coach's role is very much, they're invested in getting the best out of the kids. And sometimes that isn't a very linear process with some athletes because of the things and the pressures and the push and pull factors that they have outside of the gym. They can sometimes creep into the gym. And so when I work with athletes that train 20 hours a week at the moment, and I can tell, I know their rhythms. And when they respond to things like out of character or their emotional responses are a little bit off, or you can see that their self-esteem or their confidence is low, we know that there's something else going on. But because we need them to be in a position where they're in control of their bodies, they're regulating their emotions well. Otherwise, injuries can happen or accidents can happen. That kind of piece of communication is very, very key. And ultimately, long term, if we're teaching young girls to communicate with their coaches and advocate for what it is that they need from us at that point in time, that can only be beneficial for them growing up and going into the professional world, where they know what they need, they know what they want, and they're not afraid to go and ask for it. And that for me is one of the reasons why I feel like I'm in the position that I'm in right now, is because for my whole life and the kind of lifespan of an athlete in gymnastics, you're shown something that looks very impossible, but with the application of hard work every day, that impossible thing eventually becomes possible. And that is the whole process of gymnastics. You know, many adults will be like, oh my God, look at all those crazy somersaults. It's possible.
Yeah. It's the salami slicing of life, right?
Exactly.
Breaking it down into small, actionable points.
And the reality of gymnastics, like many sports, is very methodical.
Yes.
And so, but it just takes work.
Yes.
There are no cheats or anything like that, which is why it's such a valuable sport. Great for teaching so many different life skills. But also in terms of that coach's role in an athlete's, you know, or any youth development, they do wear a lot of hats. And when they do it well, and when they recognize, you know, the bigger picture role of what they have, not just being an instructor of tricks and skills, but understanding the more emotional side of things, like it can really be a pillar of support for a young child, whereby, you know, they might not necessarily feel that they can go to their parents because they're feeling overwhelmed or the pressure's too high, because that might actually be coming from that parent side. And so it's a way where we can provide a support pillar for a child in that growth phase. And obviously we have relationships with the parents as well. So it's a way for us to be able to kind of connect the circle of communication for a young athlete, which I think is really key to help them grow.
It's a very special role, actually, that one-on-one time. As you say, it's all about the time that they put into the gym, which can be quite a lot. So it's a very special relationship, and very valuable. So I think you touched on actually the skill building and getting to do amazing things that they might think is impossible. There are so many demands on children's, tweens, teens' lives right now with what they can be doing when they're not at school. Screen time takes up an awful lot. It's obviously a very sedentary thing. It's obviously great to get kids up and active and achieving things and doing things with their body. You touched on the endorphins, the serotonin, which they are getting from being online now often. So I'd love to know a little bit more actually about the physicality and what kids are getting from actually being in the gym rather than doing other things which they might feel are rewarding and a draw on their time. Because obviously the mind-body connection is proven, right, to help with, you know, better learning, better aptitude, better presence. Tell me a little bit more about, you know, what they're actually getting from being in the gym.
I mean, as you said, there's such a body of research that connects physical activity with, you know, heightened cognitive responses and ability to learn. And, you know, from a gymnastics perspective, we have a whole NCAA community in the US that shows some of the most prolific athletes on the planet in gymnastics who are also on scholarship going to some of the top Ivy League universities in the country. And so there's a whole industry around combining these two things together. And so it's a big piece for us at the Yard, as we're the only club in the country that support a collegiate scholarship pathway. So we do that to, you know, help our athletes, both local and foreign, to go and explore opportunities with their academia through things like gymnastics, but looking specifically at what the kids are getting when they're coming into the gym. Obviously, they get an incredible full body workout, which is why our gymnasts are always poached for every other sport. But in addition to that, it comes with a very kind of open social experience as well. And so, I mean, just to put it into context, you know, I started gymnastics as a 3-year-old, and my best friends that I talk to on a daily basis are my friends that I made in gymnastics. And I think one of the key challenges for young girls, especially with things like social media, is when you see, I don't know if you've you've experienced this, but when you see kids go onto their phones, there's this withdrawal from the world that you see. They kind of, they move into this like reclusive state, and they get zoned in to what, you know, I would say is a very artificial stimulus of things like serotonin and endorphins, which is very unhealthy because they can't regulate that naturally. So if you took away those phones, you know, a lot of young adolescents, they don't know how to get that same level of happiness and joy through things that don't require technology.
Yes.
And so that's the beauty about being in the gym. Like, you have every part of your body is challenged physically and mentally. You have the social elements that come into play as well, and you have a whole group of people. So whilst gymnastics is very much known as an individual sport, the process of learning it is very team orientated. And it is an incredible thing to go into the gym and to watch young girls recognize when one of their peers is struggling, or they're really kind of fighting and trying and failing and trying and failing. And it's that a kind of reward that you get for failing. We celebrate failures because at the end of the day, that's life.
Yeah, it means they're trying.
They're going to experience that. Yeah. And typically when you're in these kind of digital kind of removed worlds, you don't experience that. No one's going to promote failures on that side. And so those are these like real world experiences that are so valuable to young kids, because they learn how to regulate emotion. They learn how to get back up, try again. And they learn that actually, if they do fail at something, it isn't really a failure. It's just a process of learning. And that's the beauty of gymnastics. A lot of sports are that way, but gymnastics is so very much is a kind of path to execute perfect routines. Right? Yes,
it's the drilling, and you get there, you improve every time, and you get there.
Yeah. And it's these small rewards that come versus like everybody just, you know, looking for the cookie reward for doing the smallest little thing. Yes. And we all know as adults that the world doesn't operate like that. You know, trying your hardest is, you know, commendable. But at the end of the day, you know, if you go and interview for the job, everyone's going to try their hardest. So what is it that is going to put you ahead of everybody else? And that level of like internal competition, that level of drive that you get in gymnastics is, you know, goes into those transferable skills. And it's something that through sport, I don't think that there are many avenues within the digital realm that deliver those sorts of qualities and build those characteristics in young adolescents thus far. I haven't seen it yet. We don't know what the technologies are going to bring in the future, but there's something very real about that versus artificial stimuli.
Absolutely, and I've seen it with my own girls. I've got a teen myself, Miss 13, who is a gymnast and has been doing gymnastics for a decade, as you say. She started probably when she was 3 or 4. Yeah. And it's incredible to see that drive and that determination, and her looking forward to getting back into the gym and trying to master that skill, trying to nail it and move on to the next one. And it does really create a drive. I've really noticed that actually, that I think has developed over time. And it's an antithesis to the now, immediate reward system that they're being fed all the time on social media.
Exactly.
So
I think that's quite key, because, you know, I think what social media has done in a way has made the whole world and all of the professional activities that are out there accessible for viewing, right?
Yes.
But what they don't ever really talk about is the struggle that all these people that are very successful have had to go through to be able to reach that pinnacle of success in whatever field that they're doing. Or that struggle is glamorized somewhat.
Yes.
And so I do feel that in this sense, like through sport, gymnastics especially, it's such a tough sport. It's essentially 4 different sports in one sport. That glamorized journey doesn't exist. No. And it's a very real, it can sometimes be quite confronting, but it's a real process, and it's a process that, you know, we all want our kids to be successful in whatever definition that holds for us. But there is no success that's going to come overnight like
there's
that.
no shortcut.
No
So
shortcut.
talking about that, I'm dying to know a bit more about your journey. You're obviously so passionate about gymnastics and about helping young girls as well. I'm sure you've had a fair few experiences in your time too, Rosie. So tell me about your journey.
Well, it started off, I was a very energetic child.
Okay.
So my mom at the time, and obviously this was back in the 80s, so before anybody really knew anything about, you know, all the different hyperactivity elements that come with today's, I guess, diagnoses and things like that. But ultimately, my mom she had enough of me climbing the curtains at home as a 3-year-old. Yeah. And naturally, I just loved to flip upside down. So she took me to the local leisure centre where I went to a gymnastics class that my neighbour, she was older and she was doing something there. And I just immediately fell in love with it. Brilliant. I don't know whether you would have referred to me as a bit of a tomboy, but just definitely energetic.
Active.
Very active. You know, back in the days when we all used to climb trees and fall out of trees, it's something that kids don't do enough these days, which is why gymnastics is such a great place for them to learn how to use their bodies. And yeah, so I kind of fell into gymnastics, or rolled into it if you want to get punny. And I just loved it ever since. I loved the challenge of it. And I think naturally was always a person from a physical point of view that wanted to always kind of test the limits of what my body could do. And so it came so I came from a family where quite academic. So my sister's a doctor. I was the sporty one. And I grew up in Singapore. So from the ages of 13 until I graduated. And so obviously being in the international school environment where the standards and expectations are extremely high. So I have a very good view of what young kids, especially in the international community, are going through because I've lived it. Yeah. But also in our local community schools as well, academics, we all know, there's a lot of pressure on kids to be performing really well there. That wasn't my forte. Right. The academic side, I was a good student. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I was failing anything, but not an A+ student. So I really thrived in the gym, really thrived athletically. I was the sporty one that, you know, my sister from the age of 6 was like, I'm going to be a doctor and that's what I'm going to be. And that's what she did. Whereas people weren't quite sure where I was going to go or how I was going to land. And I actually have to kind of give credit to my coaches that I had at the time, because, you know, math and science, for example, were a little bit of a struggle for me until one of my coaches said to me, Rosanna, you are literally a walking science project. Like, that is what you do every day. Like, you are battling the laws of physics, biomechanics, etc. And so going back to the whole, that coaching kind of personality and that role within my life. And he ended up showing me a very different way to look at things, which kind of started the journey of actually figuring out that I wasn't a one-trick pony and could apply my knowledge, my passions, bring all of those things together and create something that wasn't this like old, stuffy, very archaic, stereotypical view of gymnastics. And I wanted to build beautiful spaces that were really inviting for young kids. I wanted to make gymnastics accessible to the masses, so not just for, you know, the elite few or the genetically superior. But also, you know, gymnastics as a sport has been changing quite a lot. And being in Singapore for a long time and also being a high performance gymnast here in Singapore as a foreigner was a difficult space to be in. So I ended up traveling a lot. My mother's from Mexico, so I went and competed for my state over there quite a lot, but there wasn't a huge amount of opportunity here. And even for the local athletes here as well, gymnastics was very fetal. Not a lot going on. And so coming back what was it, 15 years ago now, I found myself in a position where some of my teenage contributions to gymnastics in my school then created some opportunities for me. And I guess it went from there. But going back to my roots and being a competitive athlete, I guess one of the key characteristics that have built the ambition about what we can do, and basically I don't think there's really anybody else doing what we're doing at the moment, just boils down to the fact that I've been taught that you can do anything. Yeah. You can really do anything. Yeah. As long as you kind of take your progressive steps through it.
There's a rhyme and a reason for it, right?
Yes. And we obviously, and I feel very strongly about what the benefits are to young adolescents. Yeah. Like, I've lived that experience myself. This by no means has been an easy journey whatsoever. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, tears, a lot of trying to forge a path that no one has really, you know, kind of left a blueprint for before. So there's lots of mistakes that have happened as well in the process. But I guess the beauty of having gone through a similar process in my own athletic development means that all of this is, it can be tough. It's all survivable. Yeah, it's all doable. Like, nothing is impossible in this realm.
Well, that really explains it. I mean, your passion really shines through. It's incredible that you've built this business and really not just seen a need and taken the opportunity, but actually felt that need and wanted to service that for other children and teens, tweens, girls especially. Boys as well. As I say, it's a very mixed community. But it's important.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation for myself now that I'm a parent, because I actually have 3 sons. Right. But I have about 150 surrogate daughters that live in my competitive program. And, you know, the journey that I had as a young athlete going through, and that I share with a number of my best friends, we all have children now, and we talk about it all the time. It was never actually about the medals and the trophies that we won. It was always about the value that we gained. And we probably didn't realize it at the time. Obviously, hindsight's a blessing.
Absolutely. And I think you really see it differently from a parent's perspective as well, which is why this conversation is so important.
And I guess for yourself, Anju, you've got daughters going through the program. My sons are now going through our program. And the beautiful thing, like going back to having great mentors, is my coaches that helped me become that strong, resilient, like no nonsense person. Yeah. They helped me build the yard. They actually coach my children right now. And so that is it's testament to how strong that relationship can be. And 2.5 decades later, they're still working with me because they also believe 100% in the benefits and the value that kids can gain from these sorts of things. And so
it's incredible.
Massive advocate.
Well, way more than just an after-school CCA.
I mean, it starts like that, right? And you never know. And the beauty about gymnastics, especially now, I mean, there are many stereotypes that have come with the sport, and some things that, you know, aren't too great about how the sport has been run in countries around the world, like at a very high level. Yeah. But ultimately, gymnasts at the moment, and what you see on the world stage, are gymnasts of all shapes and sizes, all different backgrounds. There's no one size fits all for it. And it really is a space where any athlete can come and, you know, figure out what their potential is and discover parts of themselves that they never knew that they had. And you don't have to be a popular girl. You don't have to be, you know, pretty. You don't have to be skinny. You don't have to be any of those things. You just have to be willing to show up and do the work and be inspired by the struggle, I guess, and the challenge.
And then, as you said earlier, anything is possible. And that's what's so amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much as a mum of girls doing gymnastics. Even I have learned so much myself. And I'm sure so many people out there have as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Rosie.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Angie.
Yeah, amazing.